welcome to Fight News Now Extra. My name is John Pollock. We hope you had a great weekend, but it's time for another week of news in mixed martial arts as John Ramdine and Robin Black will join me to chat two UFC fighters being cut, Bellator 101 from Friday night, and a new main event from Manchester, England. The UFC has cut longtime middleweight Yushin Okami, who has been with the company since August of 2006 and put together a record of 13-5 inside of the organization. Okami's high point was challenging then middleweight champion Anderson Silva at UFC 134 in Brazil in 2011 and lost in his last outing to Ronaldo Jacare Souza. One more cut from the UFC this past week was delivered to Mike Ricci, who went to the finals of the 16th season of The Ultimate Fighter, losing to Colton Smith in those finals. After returning to 155 pounds, Ricci defeated Colin Fletcher at UFC 158, but it's coming off a loss last week at UFC 165 to Miles Jury. An eye injury to Michael the Count Bisping has sidelined him for his return to England on October the 26th in the headline position for Fight Night 30, where he was to fight Mark Munoz. The UFC has had to shuffle their cards up and have taken Lyoto Machida off the November 6th Fight for the Troops card to fight Munoz on October 26th, and it leaves Tim Kennedy on that Fight for the Troops card without an opponent. And Bellator 101 went down Friday night from Portland, Oregon, with Joe Warren advancing to the finals of the four-man bantamweight tournament this season, submitting Nick Kirk with an armbar in the second round. The show also featured Sahad Awad, Ricardo Terloni, Will Brooks, and Alexander Tiger Sarnovsky advancing to the semifinals of this season's lightweight tournament. And we are joined here by John Ramdine and Robin Black. We'll start off with some of the cuts by the UFC. A very polarizing decision to some. Yushin Okami has been let go. Been with the company since 2006. What is your argument to keep Yushin Okami?
Are these guys nuts? Like, seriously, 18 fights in the UFC. He lost to Jacare. And if you listen to the Underground, Jacare is a guy that can give Chris Weidman a ton of problems. This guy's an absolute animal. We see the improvements in his striking game as well as his world-class grappling game. Yes, Yushin Okami lost to Tim Boetsch in a fight that he was winning. Matt Hume told Tim Boetsch, go after this guy, you can still win. Tim Boetsch is just a fighter with heart that will never give up. And I mean, he lost to Rich Franklin when he was the middleweight champion, he lost to Anderson Silva when he was the middleweight champion, and he lost to Chael Sonnen. Like, give me a break. $42,000, and you're going to release this guy. He's ranked number 7. This is a guy that will give any middleweight a hard time in the division. To me, it just makes no sense.
I think that's the internal thought process here. This guy is almost a victim of where he fits in the middleweight division, in that we are not going to be putting this guy in a title fight anytime soon, but he's certainly dangerous enough that he can pick off a lot of contenders that we put him in with. And he's almost, he's too good to just be a middle-of-the-pack guy, but he's not going to be placed in a top position. He's not a guy that's a draw, and he's in this unserviceable position at this point.
Who's next? Like Rashad Evans?
Yeah.
Do we cut Rashad Evans next? I mean, if you fight for a title and lose, and then don't work your way back up, or you cut. I mean, what does that say to the young guys?
If we were sitting here right now and these cuts were not one of the stories, and the story was that Yushin Okami is now going to step in to fight Tim Kennedy in the main event, would people be going crazy for that fight? John Ramdine and you might be.
People don't know who Tim Kennedy is. I mean, you talk about Dennis Seaver, you can talk about a million guys that are entertaining. Yeah, for the most part, people didn't know who Cub Swanson or Dustin Poirier were. The fact is that the UFC has so few stars that it's a brand that people tune into the UFC to see exciting fights, and it really shouldn't matter. Yes, there's going to be one champion in each division, but that means somebody has to lose. Somebody's going to face the champion. They're going to lose.
Listen, everyone always, they got on me when I'll criticize a fight that's not entertaining and people aren't into, and this is one of the byproducts of that. If you're going to fight, listen, let's throw out Francis Carmont right now, 6-0 in the UFC. He's not knocking on any championship doorstep, and should he get that title fight and not win, he's going to be in this exact same position because he's dangerous enough that he can pick off guys at that weight class at 185 pounds, but he's not someone anyone is tuning in to see. And when you're fighting with that style where the win is the only thing of importance, unfortunately for Yushin Okami,
I don't think Yushin Okami is that type of fighter.
Listen, I find Yushin Okami is entertaining to me. But
exactly.
You can't use them in Japan. And it's like, what about the long-term point of this? What about all these great wrestlers, all these very athletic guys that have chosen fighting instead of maybe football, instead of maybe other things? Because it looked like a career, an athletic career they could make. There's room for an athletic career for a guy who's a good athlete. What is Okami, number 7? If you were the number 7 point guard or the 7th best, tennis player in the world, I mean, we can't cut you. You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what blows my mind here, is because you need challengers. You need to see guys climb the ranks of whatever their division is. And Yushin Okami is a good test for anybody that's trying to make their way. We saw Costa Philippou got a couple of victories. Everybody's like, wow. And then he goes out and faces Francis Carmon and shuts him down.
Whenever it comes to the matchmaking in the UFC, the philosophy is always that, we're going to match two people together, and whoever wins, we kind of go with whoever wins here. With Yushin Okami, I really don't think the idea was, this guy knocks off a contender. It's not like we have a new guy in Yushin Okami. It just means that now Yushin Okami is not someone we're looking at, and this contender is now knocked off as well. He doesn't serve a purpose where you can find another middleweight, where you put a Jacare and Luke Rockhold together. One of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose, but ultimately you're going to hopefully elevate somebody.
I understand that, but it's not just that simple. The fact is the UFC has television obligations. That's why they have certain main events on the FX show or the whatever the prelims event are. So I mean, for Yushin Okami, this is a guy that is entertaining. You're telling me that you put Yushin Okami up against Vitor Belfort? In Japan, people aren't going to be lining up to see that fight.
On pay-per-view?
Maybe not pay-per-view. That's what I mean. But the good thing about the UFC is that they don't need to just rely on pay-per-view. They have so many, or Vitor Belfort, Yushin Okami in Brazil. I mean, come on, give me a break. Yushin Okami, Dan Henderson.
Yushin Okami has had some dull fights in his life. He's also had some exciting fights.
So is George St. Pierre.
George St. Pierre is going to do 900,000 buys with Johnny Hendricks. Yushin Okami would be happy to do 9,000 buys headlining an outside show right now. That's the fact of the matter. Mike Ricci, are you disappointed about that?
Yeah, of course. I know Mike Ricci, and I know when he lost to Pat Curran, it was an emotional time for him, very difficult. I didn't know if he wanted to compete in mixed martial arts. This is just, to me, a bump in the road. Anderson Silva's lost fights, BJ Penn's lost fights, Fedor's lost fights. Just go back to the drawing board.
It's a giant crossroads for him. Either you dive in and go all the way, or you become a teacher today.
More Fight News Now Extra right now.